My name is Mark Mitford with HR Catalyst, and today I have the pleasure of talking to Ashley Martin. Ashley is with Exponent HR, and she is the Enterprise Solutions Director. So with that, Ashley, how are you doing today?
Thank you, Mark.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have with Ashley today. Um, why don't you first of all tell me a little bit about your business and when did you actually start with Exponent?
Oh wow, that goes way back. How much time do we have? I'm at what they call a boomerang employee. So I started with Exponent back in 2010, pretty fresh out of college. Now I'm dating myself, and worked here for 5 years. And then I left for another opportunity, something I wanted to go try. That lasted less than a year. And then I went to another company to work in more of like a project management type role, only to find out about 2.5 years later that there was an opportunity opening up at Exponent, and so I got back together with the leadership team here and came back here in 2019 or maybe 2018. Um, and I've been here since. So almost a total of 12 years at Exponent. I've worn a lot of different hats. 15 years ago, my role was more of business development, events coordination, learning how to move a prospective client through the sales cycle. And then fast forward to today, and I've had the privilege since I've been here of also wearing a lot of different hats in a family-owned mid-sized business where I do serve in a leadership role on the team as well as managing all of our partnerships with other firms that service clients that are similar sizes to ours. And then also a little bit of sales. So there's not a lot that I haven't done here, but that's what keeps it exciting and keeps it fun and keeps it interesting and keeps me learning, quite frankly, and on my toes. And every meeting I have with a new potential customer, I get to learn something new about their industry, and it just keeps it very engaging, keeps the role very
Well,
engaging.
that's great.
Yeah.
No, and Ashley and I have known each other for quite a few years. So my actual ongoing joke is that I've known Ashley since she was single. So we've
Yeah.
known each other for a couple of years because I know that you've got
Yep.
two kids now.
Yep.
And happily married and two kids. So that's congratulations on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I forget people know me as Ashley McMaster and not
Yes,
Ashley Martin.
I'm one of them. So
Uh-huh.
so what was just out of curiosity, and we'll dive into in just a couple of minutes the HR system side and really kind of the heartbeat of what Exponent HR does. But what was kind of the intrigue or the driving force behind joining Exponent when you did?
Well, in 2010, the world was in it. Well, the US was in an interesting economic place. There was not a lot of job opportunity when I graduated from LSU in 2009.
Hmm?
So I ended up working at a small state farm agency in my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana. And about a year later, I was contacted by a friend of mine who worked in the service group here, who told me that she'd be happy to send my resume over to the marketing and sales side. And that's what kicked off the interview process. And I got in a car as fast as I could and drove from Shreveport to Dallas for the interview that day and was able to secure the entry level job here. And I was really looking for an opportunity to learn and for someone to give me an opportunity to learn. And I was very fortunate in that I came in and had an amazing leader and mentor that I still give credit to today for everything that I know and everything that he taught me. And then after being here for 5 years and leaving, I only left because I wanted to try some other things. Exponent was all I ever known. And what was really interesting is not only did I go other places and learn about their industries, but I learned a lot about myself and how much I enjoyed working in a family owned, privately held company where it was middle market based and we wear a lot of different hats. And I'm able to have a daily impact on the customers and the clients and the prospective clients and the partners. It's a very enjoyable for me anyways. It's what drives me, the ability to have that immediate impact versus one of the companies I worked for in the middle was a company that had like 6,000 employees, and it
Mm,
was just and it was big. And the big companies need people too, but I really enjoy this size company and the atmosphere and the culture here.
right. And that's so great. It's such a true point what you just said too, because you can what you mentioned there a couple of times, Ashley, which is interesting, is that you can actually make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And within a large company, and I spent a lot of years in larger companies all the way up to Fortune 50, and it's just hard to move the needle there.
Yeah.
just because you're trying to move us, you're trying to steer and change direction with a super tanker. So it's kind of interesting that that's kind of the driving force, a little bit of that North Star for you was being with a business where you could actually make a difference. So good for you.
Thank you.
Um, so we're actually here today to talk about HR systems and the importance of what they are in the business. So just to level set, Ashley, because this is a world you've been in for a number of years, why don't you just if you could give our audience just a basic definition of what an HR system is, by your definition?
Sure. An HR platform, it can be many different things. They're all going to have different features and functionality. They're all going to be meant for different sized organizations. They're all going to solve for different problems. But in a nutshell, if I needed to give you a textbook answer to that, I would say that an HR platform should absolutely support all of your HR functions. In addition to all of your payroll functions and your benefits administration. That's kind of core. You have to have those three functions to operate as a business. And then as you grow and expand and need more functionality, you're going to see systems that also add in applicant tracking and onboarding and employee self-service and manager self-service and time and attendance along with cost allocation and scheduling. And there, I could name 20 other features that can come along with an HR platform. But in general, the definition of an HR platform should be something that's going to be in place that's going to help you automate a lot of what otherwise would be manual processes on the payroll side, on the HR side, and on the benefits side. If it's not helping you automate anything, then I wouldn't really call it an HRIS, so to speak. And I know we'll talk about this in just a little bit, but
Mhm.
there are great, very simple payroll only tools that fit a certain company. But at a certain point, when you get to a certain size of employee, you really need to consider having an HRIS in place.
Yeah, so actually that segues really nicely into our next question, which is because I know that I'm a small business owner, so we use QuickBooks. We use QuickBooks, but we don't
Yeah.
have to do a lot of work on. So from a business owner perspective or the CFO or controller perspective, when do they need to start thinking about actually getting what I would consider a real HR system? Is it employee size, company revenue? When you're talking to organizations that are reaching out to you,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of things do you mention to them there, or try to find out, and then maybe in a discovery call regarding whether they're ready for a full blown HR system?
Yeah, that's great. Good question and always a good consideration. So I have a couple of magic numbers. There's 50, and then there's 100, and then there's 100 and above, kind of all the way up to 2,000. There are some really great products out there, HR platforms with self-service that have great mobile functionality for groups that are about 50 employees and below. And what I've seen for what we do specifically is that when someone hits between 50 and 100 employees, they really are ready at a certain point to, let's call it, level up and bring about more automation in their workflows. So employee count is part of it, but also
Mhm.
complexity. So a 50-person company that's highly distributed across 13 different states with a
Hmm.
bunch of job costing and different activity that they're doing that we're trying to track versus a company that's the same size, that's all in the state of Texas, and they're all in the exact same building doing the exact same activity for a flat pay rate. One of those companies may need a system sooner than the other one does, right? The one that's more complex. And so there's definitely some different factors to look at. I think that scalability is a huge thing. I think that's what the numbers have to do with, is up to about 50 employees. You can usually kind of have one person handle it all. But
Hmm.
when you get above 50 employees, you really have a choice to make, or in that number, that range, you're either going to have to hire somebody else, another person, to come in and keep up with all the work from an HR payroll and benefit standpoint, or it's time to evaluate technology and get a good system in place. I had a group that evaluated us. This was a couple months ago. That was they were about 35-ish employees, and we demoed them and we showed them our proposal and everything we could do for them. But quite frankly, it was too much. And it was too much from a cost and value standpoint because they weren't going to use everything that we had to offer. So they ended up going with a partner of ours that really helped meet them where they needed to be from a budget standpoint and for what functionality they were going to be using. But I've also had a group that was 60-ish employees, and this was last year. They're now a client of ours on one of those platforms they started on when they were 10 employees, and they were still on it, and they had just outgrown it. And it was time for something new. And while they had great things to say about that platform, they still needed more functionality, more support to support some of the complexities that they had going on as a business and for how fast they were growing. And they really were setting up, or they are setting up for future growth. So I would say somewhere between 50 and 100. It's really time to start looking for a more sophisticated system. Again, depends on complexity as well, but those are the two things that I would focus on when you're thinking about whether or not you're ready for an HR
Hmm.
platform.
So what are, so when you think about from and being in this world for a number of years, what are some of the important things that, I don't want to say a selling proposition, but just a value proposition for an organization that has, let's say, 75 or 80 employees. What are some of the key things that you would say the rationale for why they need a good HR system?
Well, one of them I kind of already mentioned that, and that's scalability. Because as
Mm,
soon as you hire a second person to come in and take over those tasks, you're not just paying them a salary. It's salary and burden and all the payroll taxes and the benefits you're going to be offering. And I think that sometimes that's overlooked, the people aspect of it. So you want to make sure that you can scale your organization if you're truly trying to build out to grow your business. So scalability would be the first one, but the second one, kind of going back to my previous comment, is compliance. So think about that company that's 60 employees, but they're in 13 different states. Well,
mm,
what states are they in? And what's going on in those states from an overtime and tax standpoint? And is someone paying attention if they're using maybe something as simple as a QuickBooks? Is QuickBooks going to be able to keep up with the different tax regulations and the tax calculations in California, and keeping up with the tax and reciprocity rules between New Jersey and New York and Ohio and some of those more complex states? So you've got to make sure again that you're looking at your workforce and that you're ready to be compliant in whatever states you decide to do business in. The third reason that I believe companies at that size should start looking at an HRIS is really for data. Because if you don't have, a lot of people think it's all about self-service and how the system looks and the employee experience. And yes, all that's important. But at the end of the day, if that CEO or that CFO doesn't have the dashboards and the reporting to show them, hey, what does our labor cost look like? What does our labor cost look like by department? What does it look like by division? Why is it that in this department where Bob's the manager, overtime is twice as much as it is everybody everywhere else? Is it because Bob needs to hire another employee, or is it because Bob is giving all the overtime to Mark, who's been there the longest, who has the highest rate of pay because Mark's trying to put two kids through college? The data will take you, it'll show you things that you would have never known otherwise. If you don't have a system in place, you're not going to know what's going on in your business. And so when you get between that 50 and 100 employees, it can be extremely valuable beyond what you're going to be paying for the platform, because it's an investment and you're going to pay to implement and have a platform in place. But the data that it gives you, making sure it's meaningful to you and that you're utilizing it, is going to take your business a long ways.
mm. That's interesting, and and I didn't even think of just some of those nuances and
Mm-hmm.
for people that are listening to just the extreme differences in state law and regulatory law, and some states have income tax,
Yep.
all of these things that you need to check, you need to make sure that your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted there. So that's really fascinating that you brought that up.
Well, and that's not going, I mean, it's not going away. It's not going to get any easier, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, it's not.
yeah. Well, and post pandemic, a lot of people moved. A lot of people
Hmm.
went 100% remote. Now they went to live in the mountains, or they went, Colorado, where there's different paid leave requirements. I mean, it's all across the board. There's a lot of things to think about from an HR and compliance standpoint. So that's important.
Right. I know. And then sometimes even in my world on the HR consulting side, I always think, you got to remember where they reside,
Hmm.
where their state of residence is really going to
Yep.
trump where their job is, quote
Yep.
unquote, because so many people, like you said, they're in a hybrid or remote situation. So that's fascinating. So, with that, Ashley, we'll take a short break, and for our audience, we'll take a short break, and we will be back in just a minute. Thanks so much.
Sounds good.
You want to grow your business, but people issues are getting in the way. Managing the people side of your business is complex and can feel overwhelming. Does this sound familiar? At HR Catalyst, people strategy is our business. We create and implement a people strategy with you so you can get back to growing your business. HR Catalyst was founded in 2013 with the goal of bringing the best-in-class HR practices to small and middle market companies. We are your outsourced strategic people experts. We help you solve the people issues in your business that are slowing you down. If you have HR concerns, you can schedule a complimentary call on our website at hrcatalystconsulting.com.
Thanks everybody for joining us again. And now we're talking to Ashley Martin right now and having a great conversation regarding HR systems and the whole system side of the human resource platform and all the solutions that are out there. So Ashley, let's see. I was going to ask you a couple of more questions here. So once a company decides or they think they need an HRIS system, let me just clarify too, I'm using this acronym. So HR information system, so HRIS system. Um, what are some things they should be looking for to make sure they're making the right decisions for the systems because they have a lot of choices. So from your expertise, what are some things
Mm-hmm.
they need to be thinking about to make sure they're actually getting the system that should actually work for them the best?
Yeah, so I compare this, and I have this conversation all the time. I compare purchasing an HRIS or an HCM platform to purchasing a roof. So how often do you purchase a roof, Mark?
Hopefully not that
Once every
often, but
10 years, 15 years?
let's say on average, I don't know, let's say 15 years. So let's say every 15 years, maybe
Right, every
17 a
15
year.
years.
Yeah.
Every 15, yeah, every 15 years, you're not going to remember what questions to ask. And the industry's probably changed, and the relationship with insurance providers has probably changed. So I see this a lot. People are like, I know I'm in pain, but I don't really know where to start. And somebody told me to call you. And that's kind of the type of referral that we
Mm-hmm.
typically get. And so my conversation is usually a little bit less about Exponent and more about, okay, well, let's talk about you. And I'll start, peppering with discovery questions and trying to extract some pain. And then in a minute, I'll tell you kind of what I really hone in on. But what I recommend to people typically is, hey, if you're going to go through an evaluation process, let's keep it simple. Let's say, the who, the what, and the how.
Mm-hmm.
Most people skip over the who. Who are you doing business with? And they gravitate towards any sales rep that's called on them recently, knocked on their door, brought them a pie over Thanksgiving, sent them a gift, sent them a LinkedIn message, whatever it may be. And it's because that's who's in front of them. And that's why sales works. That's why outbound sales works, is it's because they're saying, oh, well, this person says they have a solution. Now, you could get to know that person and get to know their company, and they may have a fabulous solution. But really dig in behind that salesperson and say, who's the leadership at this company?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the what's the company structure? Is it privately held? Is it a public company? Do I know the employees that I'll be working with, or do I know the size of the company? And is that important to me? Because it also may not be important to you, but a lot of times, because of marketing and advertising and the way the outbound sales is, people gravitate towards some of these big names, which all have fabulous platforms. And, again, we're all good fits for different types of companies.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's really important to ask that who question. Who am I doing business with? Because we're about to be processing payroll through this company. So the who is kind of first and foremost. I had a client one time, and this has been several years ago, but maybe I heard this through our service team, that something had happened and they had changed banks and someone forgot to notify us. So we went to draw their payroll and it just bounced. And the good news is that before it bounced, they had called us to let us know, hey, look, we switched banks. We forgot about it. Here's direct wire information. We've got your pay. So we have that working relationship with our clients that they know that if they call, they can get somebody. We've got that partnership, and they know who they're doing business with, and that they have access to us and that they can call us. And I'll talk about customer service here in just a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the who is really important. Now, the what is, I think, what people get most hung up on, because what they think is, I need an RFP, I need a feature list, I need 300 features listed to make sure it can do everything. But I'll say this again. A feature list is a dead end, and it's going to be a dead end every time.
Mm-hmm.
A feature list is just that. It's a feature list. And if all you're doing is sending out a feature list or you're checking boxes, at the end of the evaluation, you're just going to have a whole bunch of feature lists that have different boxes checked, and you're not really going to know where to go from there. So this is my recommendation on the what. Before you decide to go out and evaluate, sit down with your finance leaders, your CFO, sit down with your operations leaders, your COO, ask the questions. Hey, we're going to go to market. We're going to look for a human capital management platform. Where are we hurting in the business? Let's come up with our 3 to 5, keep it simple, 3 to 5 biggest pain points. What do we need to solve for? And what's going on in the business? And it might be that your COO says, oh my gosh, the time clocks are terrible. We're having to do job costing on the backside because the time clocks don't work. And that might be something that you need to consider. It's impacting the business and impacting his or her team. It might be that the CFO says, well, I don't really like the pricing model, right? I don't know how to predict what our costs are going to be because we're getting nickel and dimed for this and that. And maybe that's one of the things that we want to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, with HR benefits and payroll, you're going to have maybe even a longer list of 3 to 5, but try really hard to narrow it down, because if you don't narrow it down to what's most important, what's going to happen is you're going to get into a sales process with a bunch of salespeople, and I'm going to pick on them because I'm one of them, and we're going to woo you, and we're going to come in and get you excited about our product, and we're going to, send you a gift and get to know your family. I mean, it's, we're building relationships, we're building trust,
Mm-hmm.
it's what we're doing, but you have to stand true to, hey, these are the 3 to 5 things that we have to solve for, because this is what's most important to our business, because there's not one salesperson that's going to have one system that solves for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to make sure you hone in on those 3 to 5 things. So that's the what. That's my kind of 2 cents on the what. The how is all about the experience. So once you have the what down, hey, this company can meet our 5 top needs and pain points. What's my experience going to be like? It's one thing to say, well, I need a payroll system. But if you look at 3 or 4 different payroll systems and you talk to 3 or 4 different references, you're probably going to hear about 3 or 4 different experiences. And one payroll system might do things completely different than another payroll system. So you've got to dig into, what is my experience going to be like using this system? What is my experience going to be like with their customer service? How are they going to support the product? And then how are they going to implement? What is my experience going to look like from an implementation standpoint? And the only thing you can do to really do your due diligence on that is to just make sure you talk to references. I'm really big on references.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a client that's going through an evaluation or a prospective client, I will introduce references via email and really force people to talk, because they need to be able to have a conversation with another human being to say, here's what we went through. Because there's no such thing as a perfect implementation. You're going to have a blip in the road, right? Here's what happened. Here's how we overcame it. Here's how we worked together. Or, hey, here's what we went through and it was terrible and we don't recommend this. And you hear that sometimes too. So it's just really important that you check references, figure out what that experience is going to look like. But to recap, who you're doing business with, what's the product, and does it meet your top 3 to 5 business needs? And then how are they going to deliver the product? What's that experience going to look like from an implementation and then customer service and partnership standpoint long-term?
Wow. That was a great
Thanks a lot.
explanation. So that was very helpful. So so on it's a similar type of question, but of course just a little bit different here. So if a company, so that they currently have a system, whoever their HCM or HR system is currently, and they're just finding that this system, it's becoming a really frustrating, whatever the criteria is for their frustration, or there's a lot of
Yeah.
pain
Yeah.
with the system. What are some drivers they should seriously consider actually moving to another system?
So, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, but I would say this: HR platforms have a lot of functionality. If the basics aren't working, go evaluate. And by basics, I mean your payroll and your taxation needs to be accurate, and you shouldn't be putting out payroll and tax fires every day. It's not a good use of anybody's time, and it creates a terrible experience for employees, for end users. They're not paid correctly, they're not being taxed correctly. So if you have anything when it comes to just the basic blocking and tackling of payroll, taxation, none of the other feature sets matter until payroll and taxes are correct. So number one, for sure, payroll and taxation. If you're having pain points with that, it's probably time to move on. In a similar realm, if you're having pain with that and you can't get a hold of anybody at your vendors in your vendors customer service group, you should start looking for another vendor. There are really great technology platforms out there with good service groups, and when you call, a human being answers. I know everybody's moving towards AI and looking at how to use AI better and AI bots, and not that any of those things are bad, but it's at the end. This is such a this industry is, I'm trying to think about the right word. There's so many nuances to it. And you've got to be able to, like, especially with payroll, because of how time sensitive it is. Hey, I'm trying to calculate an overtime adjustment for this employee before I click process on payroll. Can you help me do that? That has to be solved for right then at 4:30 on a Tuesday. There's no extra time to wait for that. And there's no 2 business days to wait for a response on that. So customer service, there's always room to look for better customer service providers and HR tech. And then also I would say, and I'm giving these recommendations because this is what I hear a lot of times from prospective clients. And it's interesting, just over the last couple of weeks and a couple of the new ones I've met with, a lot of it's been about just disjointed modules. And I think that's pretty common in this industry where, hey, I have to go set up a new earnings code and I have to go set it up in 4 different places. And it takes me 3 hours to do it. And then I get stuck and have to call service and wait for them to get back with me 2 days. And the experience is just really poor because the systems are more modular than they are truly one system, one data set, one application that they're operating in. So I would say if you've got different modules that aren't speaking to each other, there are better solutions out there than systems that are modular and disconnected.
No, that's so fascinating. And I know I've seen systems like you mentioned where they're just not that integrated.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they have all the bells and whistles, in several cases, you've got to enter into multiple fields. And I would say from just a user experience, the end user, it's very frustrating because it's taking you so long. And of course, a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, no, we're fully integrated. Well, fully integrated unfortunately, could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So,
Yep. Yep. Integration's a big word. We say
it,
I had a wise mentor one time. Words have meaning, right?
yes,
What does the word integration mean? Is this
yes.
real time? Do I have to wait till tomorrow to make sure the data sets are syncing? I mean, and those are all the questions, right? You mentioned the evaluation. How do you go about it? That you
Hmm.
may not know to ask because you haven't done it in 10 years or you haven't done it in 15 years. So it's important to ask questions like that. Okay, you say it's fully integrated, but what does that mean? And then, of course, follow up and verify by speaking to references to make sure the
Yes,
experience is a good one.
right. That's so great. Um, so if there are some business owners or your natural target audience of business owners, a CFO, controllers, head of HR, and they're thinking about this is kind of like this will be a thought provoking or thought starter for them. What are some reasons they need to be starting to think about this project now if they are starting to either look they're brand new to having a sophisticated HR system or they found that they're done with the current system, they have the incumbent. What are some reasons they need to start doing this, working on this project now?
I've mentioned a few of them. I think one for sure is scalability. If they have plans for growth, it is going to pay off big time. Get a good system in place. Get your, you work on some of the projects around, get everything in place day one. I had a client one time that came to me, they had 3 employees. And we have some minimum pricing in place. So it was going to be a little expensive on the front end, but they were on the acquisition trail. But
Hmm.
this particular CEO knew, hey, we're going to get the system in place. We're going to make the investment. We're going to implement it. We're going to implement it well. And that way, when we start bringing employees on board, everything's set up and we're ready to rock and roll. So I would say that's the first one, is just making sure you're setting up to scale if you're planning to grow. Be thinking about getting a system in place in advance, as opposed to, hey, let's just see how long we can make it by on QuickBooks. And maybe in 60, not 60 days, but maybe in 6 months or so, we'll then look at converting. Well, then you're talking about data conversion. So again, just depends on how fast they plan on growing. We've talked about compliance, really important. Again, if you're going to grow and have a distributed workforce from, the Department of Labor and the IRS, and paying employees in different states. There's a lot in that if you're on something as simple as a QuickBooks, or if you're on a platform that's not working well for you or keeping you in compliance, it's time to start thinking about that. And then the last one we talked about as well is really just access to data. You should know what your labor costs look like. You should know, why are people leaving my company to go work someplace else? And are they leaving because they are finding better opportunities from a pay standpoint? Or are they leaving because maybe all the employees that are leaving came from a very specific recruiting source that maybe isn't productive for us, and we're spending a whole bunch of money on it, and we shouldn't be, because internal referrals are bringing us better candidates, and we can save money by just doing internal referrals. So there's a lot of really great business decisions you can make when you have data in front of you. And the longer you put off having a system in front of you, you're kind of flying blind in a way as a business
Yeah,
owner.
that's so true. And it's and some of the clients that I work with and the HR Catalyst, it's amazing that so many of them they're not small organizations and they still have paper employee files. And sometimes they
Yeah,
have 75, 100 people and they have,
yeah.
here's all the active files, here's the terminated files. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I actually kind of cringe because I'm like, oh,
Oh
I'm
gosh.
sure there's some very interesting things that are in the personnel file that there should be
Oh yeah.
versus
Oh yeah.
having it all uploaded and stored in a beautiful system that should have a pretty high level of security versus
Yeah.
a paper file.
Well, and I probably wouldn't have said this 10 years ago, but I would also say, just if I'm a business owner and I'm looking to grow a business, in the world that we live in today with cell phones, everything's at our fingertip, employees are expecting a level of self-service.
Mm,
So if an employee, let's call it somebody young, Gen Zs and the upcoming, right? They're expecting to pull up their phone and be able to look at a pay stub and see their PTO balance. And if you don't have a system in place that's going to support that natural just expectation of that employee, you're not going to be able to keep good talent and develop good talent.
hmm
And so a lot of it has to do just with the retention of people as well. It's expected. When I started Exponent 15 years ago, it wasn't necessarily the expectation. It was like, wow, look at that PTO, it's online. But now it's expected.
Right, sure.
So
Yeah. That's
another
so
thing to
true.
think about.
So, but any final thoughts, Ashley, that you wanted to share with the audience before I ask you a couple of things about you?
Oh gosh. I don't I think for me, I will share this one final thought. I would, and I've seen this, so for whatever reason, post pandemic, I've seen so much more of this. Work as a team. I
Mm,
understand that a lot of times payroll will roll up underneath HR, or HR and finance will work closely together, but operations is kind of separate. When you go through an evaluation, just don't leave anybody out of the discussion,
mm,
and hold fast what you guys decide as a team that you need. And I think that's going to get you the best result. A lot of times I'll see companies go through an evaluation and we're only talking to HR and not finance, or we're only talking to
mm.
finance and not HR. And it's not addressing the needs and benefiting the organization as a whole. And if people inside their organizations would work together as a team and collaborate through this evaluation, I think that there would be optimal results for everyone involved. And so I would just encourage to not make it to kind of think outside of yourself, so to speak, in your role and what you're trying to accomplish, and make sure you're involving everybody that could touch the system or be impacted by the system or its data that it's generating for you.
Right. Okay, that's great. So, a couple of other just kind of fun things. So,
Yeah.
um, books, podcasts, any place you get good information regarding
Whew.
anything that have been helpful. You even mentioned something earlier about mentoring. What are some things you've done
Yeah.
just to stay current and just to continue to grow and develop in your career?
Yeah. Thank you for giving me all the options. I am not much of a reader or a podcaster, and I'll tell you why. I'm not sure I have the patience for books. I've worked on that. Podcasts I listen to off and on, but I also don't have a long commute. But since I moved to Dallas in 2010 to start with Exponent, I've lived within 10 minutes of this building in Addison. So I have time for like one song and one phone call, and that's it on my way in and out of work. Here's what I've done. I've been busy raising kids for the last 8 years. I've got two of them. They're 8 and 5. I've not done a lot of books, podcasts, but I will say this. I am big on mentorship, meeting with individuals like you. Like, I've known you for 15 years now. It's been a huge blessing for me to form a lot of the relationships I've formed with business owners, even in my first 5 years at Exponent, because I still talk to them today.
Mm,
The other thing that I'm real big on that I think is huge, if you don't have time to read the books or listen to the podcast, if you're raising kids, take some time to find a career coach, take some time to find a mentor, take some assessments.
mm,
You'll change over time a little bit. Now, some of the assessments don't change, but I will throw out a couple of my favorites. I took a Strength Finders, the Gallup Strength Finders assessment last year, kind of rocked my world,
mm,
put it back into perspective, what I should be spending my time on every day. I had an amazing career coach that I worked with on that. I still work with him today. I've taken Culture Index, I've taken Predictive Index.
mm,
And every time I take one of those assessments, I learn something new about myself.
mm,
And when I learn something new about myself, it helps me focus my daily activities on the things that fill my cup.
mm,
And it helps me relate to others and understand. I like to see other people's assessments. It helps me be a better employee. It helps me be a better friend, because I know, okay, that person communicates that way because of this, or they're asking this question because of that. That's been a huge growth point for me in the last several years. And primarily that's what I've done. If I had to throw a book out there, there's a book called, I think it's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, that's really
mhm,
good. I did listen to that one, an audio book. And then I listened to a leadership podcast. It's been a couple of years, but I'm real big on leadership and just in servant leadership and how do we serve others, and, circling all the way back to the very beginning of our conversation. If I don't wake up every day and have the ability to positively impact the life of someone else, because that's what we should be doing, right? Every day. That's our calling. That's what we should be doing. And I mean, I just yesterday, or maybe it was this morning, I sent a resume over for someone that hadn't had a job in a while, just
mm,
kind of been dealt a tough hand the last, year or so. And I sent his resume over for an opportunity in an HR role. And it's like, okay, even if he doesn't get the job, there's an opportunity for him, right? Like,
mm.
I've positively impacted him in that day. And I think that's what we're called to do. So that's
Sure.
what I spend my time on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you. No, it's great because as we mentioned a couple of times, we've known each other for a few years. So it's kind of fun to watch you and honestly kind of watch you and kind of grow and develop in your career. So good for you. So,
I appreciate
um, last question. So what advice, now that you're much more wise, so what
it.
advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
Oh man. Uh, I'd give myself a lot of advice. I'll start with, it is so easy to be short-sighted as a teenager. My 16-year-old self, I think back to just being 16 and how hard it is, and being not concerned about the future, but not sure about the future, but you're also not really thinking about the future. You're thinking about today. Just think long term, right? As much as you can in long term decisions. And some of that has to do with, something really simple. I know it sounds silly, but set up a LinkedIn profile. I came to interview for this job when I was 23, and Fidel Baca, chief marketing officer at the time, he said, "Do you have a LinkedIn profile?" And I said, "What's LinkedIn?" At age 23. And like, that, so just the little things, step
Sure.
toward that career, set up a LinkedIn profile, start connecting with your friends' parents who have jobs. I will also say, I know 16 is young, but if I could say something to my 16-year-old self, value learning and be
Mm,
curious. Ask lots of questions. I think about the babysitting I used to do when I was young. I kind of think back and wish, man, if I had just like asked the mom or the dad, like, what do you do for a living? Oh, what does that mean? I probably could have learned some things at a younger age. Just be curious about business if that's what you're
yeah.
interested in getting into. Ask questions, connect. You're never too young to learn. And trust me, coming from someone who's been having kiddos for the last 8 years, you're not going to be as sharp at 40 as you are at 16. So as much information as you can take in at that young age, when you have the energy and the brain capacity, it's huge. So The last thing I would mention, this is probably less for a 16-year-old and more for a 22-year-old. When you're looking for a job, do not look for money. You have to look for a person, a mentor, a leader that's going to pour into you and teach you and mentor you in your 20s. And I think that's huge. Obviously, you've got to pay bills, yes, but in your first job, second job out of college, do the best you can to get on a team with somebody that's truly going to help you grow. And I think that is really, for me personally, has been what has set me up for success in my life.
Mm,
Is
wow, good for
starting here
you.
at Exponent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you. That was a great response. I'm just saying this just because of hearing this, and it is because it's when you start your career or when you're 16 or what have you, whatever age, when you're younger to whatever level and just really starting a career, I think just a lot of people are just a little bit disillusioned,
Mm-hmm.
and they're chasing the dollar and the big buck
Yep.
and this and that, and they're really in a situation to where they, within a year or two, they're miserable.
Yeah.
Or for whatever reason, or within, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, they're like, I changed jobs, I hated my job. So like you said, just finding a place where you can learn,
Yeah.
be curious, I think is huge. And the ability to learn is a gift.
Yeah.
And also just finding, whether it's inside your company ideally, but also outside, finding a good mentor, a
Mm-hmm.
good coach, a good person you can bounce ideas off of, and not be worried about if the question's silly or if it's going to make
Right.
me feel like, oh, well, that's a dumb question. I'm like, well, there's no such thing as a dumb question. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I know I'm going to sound like an old soul when I say this, but um, I also big time believer in I'm all about a hybrid work environment, but these
Mm,
full-time remote jobs for young people, find an office to go to. Just learning through osmosis and the people that you're going to be around. I think since pandemic, we've swung back into the office a little bit more, which means we're working as teams together and we're able to impact, the younger workforce. But uh, when it comes time to find that first job post college, be well networked. Look for somebody who's going to be a teacher and help you grow.
yeah, that's awesome. So how can people find you, Ashley, if they'd like to talk to you about like to find out a little bit more about you, find out a little bit more about your organization and payroll
Yep.
systems, and HRIS systems. How can they find you online?
Online on LinkedIn, you should be able to find me under Exponent HR. Ashley Martin could be, if sometimes it's easier if you type in my maiden name too, Ashley McMaster Martin. Online is fine. I also believe I'm on the Exponent website. I'm not sure if my contact information is there or not, but if anyone has questions or just wants bounce some ideas off of me about maybe going through an evaluation, I've helped a lot of clients do that, and yeah, just feel free to reach out. I'm always open to connecting.
Great. Okay, well, thanks a lot for your time, Ashley. This has been really insightful.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yep, you're welcome. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.